BSides DC 2016 videos are brought to you by clearedjobs.net and cybersecjobs.com, tools for your next career move, and Antietam Technologies, focusing on advanced cyber detection, analysis, and mitigation.
Good afternoon. My name is Ethan Ortiz, and thanks for showing up to act and think like an epidemiologist. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Oh, man. Can you hear? This is CNN. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Testing 1 2. Should I just yell then? Okay. Yeah. Okay, testing 1 2. Testing. No? Testing, guys. Testing. Can you hear me in the back? If not, can you move up, please?
Nothing? Anything? Nothing? Can't hear anything out into the room. That's because none of these are up. So you got to have these dials up. All right. So glad I can edit this part out. There you go. Sorry about that.
Thank you. All right. Okay. With that, my name is Ethan Ortiz. This is the only time I'll mention that I've been with Symantec 14 years, mostly as a systems engineer. In the last 2 years, I've changed into a different role, working with our innovation team. And this is one of the wonderful things I get to do, is present just these type of thought leadership type stuff and trying to convince you to convince others to think a little bit differently about the cyber situation. So I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to show you a tool, and then I'm going to give you some tips that you can take back to the office. So it all starts with a visit to the doctor. So go to my doctor. This is like 5 or 6 years ago now. And yeah, that's me on the left. After I got my annual checkup, my doctor asked me, "So Ephraim, you're a smart guy." She assumed a lot. But she said, "You guys doing security are pretty smart. Your company has a lot of smart people researching all this antivirus stuff. So why do I keep getting viruses on my computer?" Right? This is like six years ago now. And it hit me like, wow, this is a very smart lady. She's been a doctor for a really long time. And she asked me this question. So I immediately just said, "Doctor, you're a very smart doctor. And I'm sure there's a lot of medical practitioners researching, Ebola and stuff. So why do I keep getting sick? Why do I keep getting sick?" And that kind of spawned an idea that, because I was able to educate a highly educated person on, and I made a bridge, right? I connected that bridge from her way of thinking to cyber. Anybody has a drink? And then she said, "Oh, I get it." So I started researching, and I had friends who were nurses, and they gave me all these books on epidemiology, basically level 6 viruses and stuff like that. This is before the whole thing in Africa happened. And one of the books mentioned a tool called EpiInfo. So I guess none of you know what EpiInfo is. It's a tool developed at the Centers for Disease Control that's provided to epidemiologists, so when they go out in the field to study malaria or smoking, Ebola, whatever, they enter the data into this tool, and then they run these statistical widgets that would either predict where people are getting sick, why they're getting sick, and so on. So I started playing with the tool just because I'm curious that way. And I ran some old data. This is from 1854. It's a very famous epidemic in London. And this is called an aberration detection chart. This is, you can see the little reference in the bottom. It's the EpiInfo software. And I was like, oh, that's cool. What other stuff is in there? Oh, they have these 2x2 widgets. These little things you can run that you ask it, why did somebody get sick? Well, we don't know. So let's just find out, what did they eat at the picnic where a lot of people got infected? So some people ate bacon, some people ate butter, some people ate turkey, and so on. And they did these things called 2x2 tables. The laser's not as good. These 2x2 tables. So out of the 359 people that were at this massive picnic, 118 of them were exposed to the cooked bacon and got sick. 34 did not get sick. All right, bear with me. This is going somewhere. Okay? Bacon's good. So it wasn't the bacon. It was the butter that got everybody sick. So they found out that, that there was a larger proportion, 82%, almost 83%, that if you had had the butter, you would have become sick. All right, so that's one tool. That's just the numbers. Okay, and then I had one of those midnight explosions in my mind, like, oh my God, this tool has a SQL connector. I wonder what happens if I plug it into the Symantec database. It's SQL. And I just clicked on the widgets. Give me a frequency analysis for the alerts that are coming in and which machines are getting infected and why. And I saw this. I'm like, most of the detections are not being detected with the antivirus. It's being detected with this proactive stuff. That's interesting. Again, remember, this is a CDC EpiInfo, a tool for researching biological viruses, right? And then I had a Pareto button, and I'm not a statistician. I just hit the little Pareto button, and most of the events were left alone. I'm like, oh, wow, that's a lot of left alones. Okay, and then they have something called an epi curve, which takes account of the number of infections that have occurred over time. And then, and this is something that has been used for decades to look for a burst of infections. Okay, and so what happened that day? So that's a question. So I've tried this tool with many other products, not just Symantec, and it raises a lot of questions. It doesn't really answer many questions, but it makes you ask, what happened that day to cause that, right? Okay. Then it had other stuff that I could run. So frequency on what policies were flagged the most, which viruses were the most prevalent. So you get the idea. So those on the bottom there are behavioral policies. They're like, people plugging in USB sticks and the like. And then I asked for a frequency analysis on what was detected, and I found that like 90% of the infections in the environment were basically attributed to sality. So this is the epidemiologist thinking, what about my environment makes me exposed to sality? All right, so instead of trying to write a virus definition or write another IPS signature, what is it about my environment that I could change to make it less susceptible to that? All right, so I kept reading and reading about epidemiology, and I found these other things, cross-tabulations, case control studies, cohort studies, and clinical trials, and I'm going to talk about some of those later. But I showed you the epi curves. That's an epi curve on the top. So on that day, something happened. So maybe I should look, narrow. If you're using Splunk, narrow your search to those days. A few days before, a few days after, whatever SIM you're using. All right, so then I looked at the history of epidemiology and how the United States invests its money in healthcare, in public health. And I saw a link with the digital. So before 1979, there was something called sickness management. All right, so I'm going to go compare it to our digital world today. So sickness management is basically dealing with the effects of the disease after the fact. So let's take a look at it in the digital world. So we install some technology because we love to buy technology. We install it on our endpoints or gateways, whatever, and then we wait for the security vendor to provide us our vaccines and so on. And then I don't know, not you guys, of course, but most security guys just sit back and wait for the alerts, right? You wait for the alert, and when the alert pops up, you do your job. You check your console on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Everything's cool because it says I detected a virus and I removed it. I detected a call to a command and control and I stopped it. And then one day something happens and you call your favorite IR team to come in and do their job, and then you do the investigation and remediation. And then it's done. And then you go back to waiting for the alerts. And then it happens again. And it happens again. So it's like I call it the hamster wheel of death. You just kind of do it over and over. So in the epidemiological circles, there's 3 types of prevention. This would be called secondary prevention, where you wait for the thing to get diseased, and then you try to alleviate the symptoms, right? This is crazy. Then after 1979, the NIH published this huge document that changed everything into like wellness management. And I'll go into more detail on that, but let me just illustrate it here for you guys on the digital side, and then I'll go back. So wellness, if we were to apply wellness management to our same routine, that big line on the bottom is the new thing, right? So you actively study your environment. So are people, what are the logs telling me? Not just I detected something definitely bad, but what's probably bad, possibly bad, right? This is preventive security thinking, okay? So you study who's getting infected or who's running a certain application that's not signed. What are they doing? When are they doing it? Where are they doing it? I have to be very careful. My kids are in the audience, so I can't use certain words. Though there was a joke right there. Clinical and case control studies. You guys got it. So you study. The epidemiologists study like where did people drink water from? Where did they eat? What did they eat? Who were they with? Right? And then you run some statistical analysis on it, and you get possibly infected, probably infected, or confirmed. Those are the 3 things that they look for. Whereas management wants to know, there definitely is a breach or we're definitely clean. It's like a 0 or 100%. Epidemiologists take a different approach. You could be sort of sick, right? You got Ebola on Monday, but you're not going to show symptoms for like 7 days. But if you're exhibiting the symptoms, initial symptoms, then if you start reacting towards the beginning, you have a better chance of containing that thing, right? All right, so wellness management requires that you institute controls. And I think everybody in here has instituted controls, but an epidemiologist will do it a little bit differently, I think, than most people I see, where instead of just deploying that IPS policy or that firewall policy or AV or whatever DLP policy, they would deploy their wish policy. Like, what policy would you love to deploy in log mode, right? So management won't allow you to install, to block USB. They won't allow you to block certain applications from ever being blocked. So why don't you turn on your wish list, then after a few weeks or months, you decide how long your clinical study should be, then you have evidence. Okay, this is what a very famous epidemiologist did, where he tried to convince management to institute a control, and they said, no, you don't have enough evidence. He collected the evidence, and when he presented it, they had no choice, because now they're liable, okay? So we need to do a similar thing. Okay, but we need to create those wish policies. So what ends up happening, I think, is that your number of incidents should go down, right? And I'll go into some studies that we've done later. But instead of just chilling back, okay, now I've done such a great job, now I can watch Netflix at work. How about go do more? Not that anybody does that, but do more studies. Okay, just study your environment more. If you're sick of endpoint security, go to DLP or your network IDS, whatever. Study them over a long period of time. And I want to say that this is very different than your IR guy, your forensics guy, your re-imaging guy, because we still need those people. This is the kind of, I tend to say it's boring, but exciting. Because you're going to look at the long term. You're not going to discover the APT. You're going to discover the behavior people do that exposes them to infection. So, like I said, if it's USB, if it's NAS, if it's the browser is not getting patched fast enough, if the plugins aren't getting patched enough, now you have evidence that you can send up to suggest our patching of the operating system is not enough. Maybe patching Adobe Acrobat is more important than patching the OS based on the statistics you've collected. I don't know. You know your neighborhood better than me, right? All right, so this is the Healthy People document that I copied quite a bit from. So this is the 1979 paper by NIH. You can download it. It's enormous. But here's a kind of what it was basically saying. Before 1979, the United States invested most of its budget for health on fighting the pathogen. Okay, so that's cholera, malaria. You can see them there. So that's antivirus, right? Fighting the pathogens. Okay. After 1979, after the CDC and NIH studied all this stuff, they realized, wait a minute, we could save more people's lives and have people live longer, not by focusing on preventing malaria, cholera, the flu, and E. coli, and so on, but just have them stop eating so many burgers. All right? Have them stop, driving without a seatbelt. Stop smoking. Right? They found that these behaviors, in the document they're called lifestyle choices, made them die sooner. So how do we apply that to the digital? Well, first let's look at the controls that they put in place for the past and for past and post 1979. So before they, vaccines, you had sewage treatment plants, you had, the little signs that say wash your hands, and then all these controls to prevent like Spanish flu from spreading, put the face masks on. And after 1979, eat well, right? These are preventive controls. Exercise, don't sit on the sofa. That's what the sofa meant, by the way. Seatbelts were mandated, and thousands of people were saved the very next year. Okay? Little tiny controls and no smoking. So instead of focusing on, I found the APT, or I found this, and let me write this IOC, this is awesome. It's exciting, right? This is not the kind of work, that's great. But this kind of work is kind of the boring, drawn-out work that could have a huge impact because you're having people put on their seatbelt, right? Stop smoking. So let's compare it in the digital. So this is before viruses, worms, Trojans, APTs, backdoors, all the cool stuff that we like to hunt. So how about if we just educate our users, observe our users? What are they doing? Are they BitTorrenting? Is that a real word? BitTorrenting at work? Are they touring? Are they running like a gazillion browsers that the corporation is not patching? And are they click addicts? I don't know if that's a thing, but like if that's a word, but you know who I'm talking about. If it has a hyperlink, I want to click it, right? People, is there something we can do to kind of alter that behavior? Or if we can't convince them to do it, put a control in place. And if you can't prevent it, monitor it so you can convince upper management to allow you to control it. Because if you disable certain features, the masses are going to riot, right? So you're going to have to get management buy-in, and the only way you're going to get it is with evidence. You need evidence-driven security. So what kind of controls did we put in place for all that the viruses, the Trojans, the PTs and stuff? Anti-malware, network IDSs, endpoint IPSs, firewalls. We bought all this stuff. And then I don't know exactly when it started, but then we started using certificates and containerization, and we stopped focusing so much on the antivirus and started shifting over to policies, checklists, patching, security awareness programs, and so on. But I don't think we're not doing that enough. We need to focus a lot on this side, because buying 5 extra network IDS isn't going to do it, right? We have to get the users to learn to cover their mouth when they cough, if you will, and don't eat that sandwich off the floor. Just you wouldn't pick up a sandwich and eat it off the floor, so why would you do it to a USB stick on your computer, right? All right. And then another thing, I usually, this is the first time I'm going to say this stuff in front of my kids, but we've been teaching our kids to do this, when you cough, okay? We didn't teach them that in our yearly security compliance or health compliance training. We had to do that repeatedly, over and over. And too often, companies just do it once a year or worse at the employee boot camp when they first get hired, and that's it. And then every year they just have to sign a piece of paper that says they're aware of the security policies. No, we have to kind of repeat it over and over, and they're pretty good now. The irony, somebody pointed this out to me, the irony about the coughing into your arm is that it will not make you healthier. It makes the other person healthier. It's a weird thing. It's one of those altruistic things that we do as humans. We teach our kids to take care of others when we ask them to cover their mouths. And we hope that everybody else does it. We need that kind of mentality, that kind of reinforcement at work. Don't click on that document from a random person. Not as much to protect you, but to protect the entire corporation. Right? Otherwise, you're sneezing over the entire company. or coughing. All right, I made this slide to kind of show the more parallels. I'm telling a lot of stories so you can take some of these nuggets and share them when you're out there. So in both biological and digital space, you have simple threats, the common cold or adware. You have complex threats, Ebola, Stuxnet. You have the sharing of stuff. So when we share water, we have the possibility of getting an illness from it. When we share NAS drives, we have a possibility of getting an illness. When we share needles, which you shouldn't do, I don't care what you do on the weekends, just don't share the needles. And then the USBs, when you share USBs. So it's a similar type of thing. As part of the human condition socially and in the social digital space, we have to share. But you don't have to be reckless. And then both in biology and digital, the bad stuff seems to find a way around whatever we implement. So no matter what technology you put in place, the bad stuff's still going to get in. Right? So let's stop assuming that we can buy the golden pill. That's going to solve everything. And then I kind of like this one too. It's since the dawn of life, there's been diseases. Since the dawn of the digital age, has been digital diseases. Right? So I'm telling a lot of these stories this way, a lot of these little snippets, so that you can share those with people, so that they can click, so you can have that aha. So now let's get into more thinking like an epidemiologist. When an epidemiologist goes out to usually another country, but we have a number of epidemics here too still today, like the ice cream one, we just had a few, last year. They cannot afford to cure everything or to put a control everywhere. So they go in with these three little circles in mind. Where can I take my little resources? They only have so much money. Where can I apply my budget to stop the disease? And what that triad illustrates is that the disease can only occur, in this case an infectious disease, if you have all three. So if you can invest a little bit of money here, this is the pathogen, that's the thing that's actually getting people to get sick. If you can do something to prevent that, great, like a vaccine. If you can't afford a vaccine or you don't have one, is there something you can do to the host to protect it? If you can't do that, is there something you can do to the environment? So in the biological space, that would be environmental controls, might be like the netting over the bed for malaria. Okay. In the digital space, you have WebSense, you have blue coats and all this stuff to control the environment coming to the host. And on the host, we do all kinds of crazy stuff. Signing of applications, we containerized applications. We're going really crazy with all this stuff, trying to isolate everything. We're trying to put everything in its own little biohazard containment unit. If you can think of it that way. So how can you convince management to give you everything you want? You can't. So pick where you're going to focus your energies for the particular types of problems you're having. Okay, so don't try to get everything. Focus. Unfortunately, that requires studies. So, is there a question? So thank you. So is the host the people or the computer? Okay. Can you come up because you got competition? Pruning the people? Oh, yeah, I wish we could do that. No, so I've been in many dinners where people say exactly that. And I don't think we can go that far just yet. Maybe in the military they can do that or something. But what I've seen done, like what happens at my company, we get phished internally. And if you're dumb enough to click on it, you get the little rat that says, guess what? You're going to security training. So it's kind of a punishment, right? You're not getting fired, but if you click the link, you're going to have to go to security awareness training. So firing people, that would be great. Maybe on the third strike. But yeah. How many of us would be out of a job right now? Yeah. All right. So this is another, I mean, I'm shamelessly stealing from the Centers for Disease Control. This is something called the SIR graph. It's susceptibility, infectability, and recoverability. Say that 5 times. So it shows you if you can see it from back there, the red marks are when you were susceptible or exposed to something. The longevity of the line is how long you were exposed to that thing. And then if you have a black anchor, you're dead. So you basically died. Okay, so that's one of the ways they plot out, okay, when somebody was exposed. This is how they determine things like the incubation period, and if you go more than 21 days without symptoms, then you're not going to get Ebola, right? Because they saw that the longest time was 21 days. So what you're looking at here is my first prototype about 2 years ago, and on the y-axis are usernames for computers instead of people's names, and on the x-axis is time. And then the background colors, it's pretty bad, you can't see the colors, but is the groups, so the logical groupings in the corporation. So this was the proof of concept. And then a buddy of mine, his website's right there, his GitHub is right there. We got together and built this tool. I'm totally ripping off the CDC. So we have, again, x-axis is time, y-axis are the hosts. We changed the host names to numbers so we can actually, so I can show you this. But all we did, this is a 2-year-old slide, and we'll work up to the more recent stuff. But the gray dots are updates, content updates. The blue dots are check-in times, and the red dots are infections. And again, since most of these presentations people can't see them, I'll highlight them for you. Those are the infections. So what we decided to do is use that SIR idea to kind of just show the data visually and let the human correlation kick in. So this is one of the proof of concepts we developed. So we spotted patterns. So that's the same computer getting infected almost every other day. Okay, but here's the crazy part. If you log into the console, it said I detected something and I cleaned it. The next day, I detected something and I cleaned it. So when you look at, it's like going to the doctor and they go, oh yeah, you were sick, but you're fixed now. And then they go to a different doctor and another one and another one and another one, but they don't see the big picture, that they've been getting infected over and over, or they're getting ill for some reason over and over. And I forget which one of these it was, because there were different reasons for this happening, but one of them is a downloader. So the downloader did not have a signature for it, but when it downloaded components, the AV detected it and cleaned it. Okay? But when you look at a console, regardless of what it is, you're just seeing that point in time versus timelining it this way. All right. And then, by the way, the word disease, I thought it meant something you caught. It's not. It doesn't mean that. It means the abnormal function of an organism. Okay, so, and that's I say that now because we spotted other diseases that were non-pathogenic, right? So like we saw these white lines. I don't know if you can, it looks like you can't see them from there, but basically we saw a pattern of when people are turning off their computers, right? We didn't expect to see that on a visualization. We didn't program it to do that. We just visualized events over time with color. I'm like, some people are not turning off their computers, and they have little red dots in the middle of the night. Who's sitting on that computer at 2 o'clock in the morning? Then we spotted other things like this one here, where my laser, there you go. This is getting more updates by a lot compared to the other ones. Why? You had a group of machines that were checking into their manager like almost nonstop, saturating the WAN links, okay? So I forget if it's this one or the next slide, but they tended to be the drives are full. So when a hard drive is full and it tries to download content, when it tries to decompress it, it can't, so it fails, and then it waits for the next check-in time, and it downloads it again, and it can't install it, shuts it, turns it off, next 15-minute check-in, does it again. So that was a abnormal function of an organism, and after seeing it this way, just go check the policy and change it. Oh, look at that, the hard drive's full. Let's remediate that. But those machines were now susceptible because they weren't getting their updates. And then this is another one where you had an entire office drop off, and they just stopped checking in. Okay? Yeah. So on a console, when you're looking at thousands of machines or hundreds of machines, whatever your organization is, as you're scrolling down, if you see a big blank block, that would be a problem. All right? But if you looked at it just for the day, it looks fine. Then we looked at another product. So we took the same product. The console, this interface is something we worked on, but this is a different product. We collected their logs and doing it again. Okay, here we go. There's the same type of stuff, different company. And those two bottom ones were the first high priority ones. Actually, my laser pointer's not working so well. These two, let's investigate those. What's going on there? Look at these. This was very troubling. These guys, this entire group is checking in, but never getting updates. It's not even trying to download updates anymore. So again, these are not infectious diseases. It's just that the hosts are not functioning correctly, and we're able to see that, go change the policy, and now it works. It functions correctly. So the probability of them getting infected is lowered because they're actually working the way they're supposed to. Is this making sense? And then these are machines that, the other machines were pretty consistent in being turned off at night. These were not. So they were violating policy. You're supposed to turn these off. So go change, force them to get turned off. Then one more. This is a later revision. This is back in like April 2015. This one we added application device control, so like what processes are executing, when they're executing, are USB sticks getting plugged in, all that stuff. And that's shown as green. So quickly you can see that two machines are very green. There's a lot of activity on those machines. They're violating a lot of policy. So why? And then my buddy made it so that when you click, what I ended up calling the patient report came up. There it is. So now it shows in color. It breaks out the firewall IPS, what files they downloaded, what AV signatures were triggered, and application device control. And very quickly you can, see that the firewall is getting hammered. Something's up. It's either communicating out or something's scanning in. So then we added another button. Oops. To get even more detail, so we can hover over that one event and see what's causing it. So this was my buddy doing work on his customers. I ended up using this at one of mine, and the moment we lit it up on his data, we found dual NICs servers. So one NICs on the inside, one NICs on the outside, bypassing all their security, and all we saw was black lines across, showing heartbleed just hitting the company. But the product was blocking heartbleed, right? So the IPS was actually saying, I detected heartbleed and I stopped it. I detected heartbleed and I stopped it. But it at least let them know that you have an abnormal functioning of an organism here. It was not supposed to have two NICs plugged in, one to the outside and one on the inside that way. So again, I'm not focusing on discovering the APT. I'm focusing on looking at the long picture and making the hosts healthier by making them work correctly. Then I used other tools. This is Kibi, it's part of the Elk, it's like an offshoot of Kibana, to do these are scans, AV scans. So I saw machines that were taking too long. And I believe this is the one that was a NAS scan from an endpoint. A very cheap customer setting up an endpoint to scan a NAS drive, which would take forever. Bad idea. And then policy detections by time, alerts by OS and stuff like that. Then this is a very old slide, and you can see my awesome graphics. This is just to illustrate kind of the mentality change from today to the Epidemiologist, right? Okay. So that guy right there is your everyday information security guy. You know, he's a firefighter, right? He's saving all these machines, all these hosts. He rips them out of the network, re-images them, and they're healthy again. They go off to their merry way. You introduce this new guy. Again, my graphics are terrible, but you introduce this Epidemiologist guy, and he's going to come in, and the legacy guy is going to say, "Where are you going? Help me save these people." I am going to help. I'm going to find out why they're getting sick in the first place. That's a whole different way of thinking, right? It feels good to save somebody's computer, to get them back into production and so on. This boring work, somebody needs to do it, right? And when they find out, oh, it was the NAS drive, so let's put a rule or let's install a scan engine on that thing, and now you'll have less people to deal with, less laptops to re-image, right? because you're lowering the amount of people that are getting sick. Yeah, stop, the water's polluted. All right, and then folks started asking me, so where do we get these people? You know, you information security guys are expensive. You know, there's a skills shortage and so on and so forth. And then I started basically arguing that the help desk would be a great repo of people to hire. So an epidemiologist doesn't have to be a static analysis ninja or a dynamic analysis ninja. They just need to have a logical mind, be analytical, and have a lot of patience. But help desk folks, if they have enough years in the job, they know where your Exchange servers are. They know where your SharePoint servers are. They know the neighborhood, right? So what better person to put in front of a dashboard to look at statistics? Like when they see an outlier, like on some of those graphs, like the customer I had where he saw, oh, they're dual nicked. They're not supposed to be. I didn't know that. I couldn't possibly know that. He knows his neighborhood better than me. And that's where I think help desk, hiring up internally, and who doesn't want to be in security? It's sexy, right? This may not be the sexiest entryway, but it's a way in. And I believe, and I mean, my son, my 10-year-old here, has seen my tool at work at home, and even he's pointed out, oh, that looks like this, and that looks like that. And I was like, a 10-year-old can figure it out. Yeah. And then I put a slide up for clinical trials. Okay. Okay. Cool. Perfect. Almost done. So this goes back to what I touched on earlier. Survey your environment. Analyze as many logs as you can. Then you create that awesome control that you wish you could put in place, right? Test the control. Now, it's very important that you test randomly. Okay? Too many times when I talk to customers, and they're like, yeah, we tested that product and it's terrible. Self-censorship. It's terrible. It's like, where'd you test it? Oh, we tested it on our IT guys. Wait. Hold on. Can you pick somebody from HR, somebody from finance, somebody from, sorry. Okay. So, basically randomly select. So I wrote a little Python script that just goes into the Symantec database and just picks machines at random. And then I can apply a policy, the wishful policy, on just those machines. And now, as you know with polling, when you poll randomly, it tends to represent the rest of the population better versus polling biasly. Okay, let me just poll everybody that, like in that famous telephone survey back in the 1930s, where they surveyed who would vote for the president, but they only called people who had a phone, people who had money, right? It wasn't a truly random sampling. So I would suggest test the control on a truly random sample, then measure the effectiveness of the control after a period of time. You decide whether it's a week, a month, or maybe you do checkpoints. And if it was terrible, start over. If your control was terrible, rewrite it and start again. If it was awesome, deploy it to everybody else, right? Just like the biological space, just like the pharmaceuticals do, just like epidemiologists do. You do the placebo type thing and the real one. Okay, I got like 9 minutes left. So changing how users think of digital threats. So think digital diseases. So just tell the users malware is just another type of infection, right? Just like you get the cold, you're inevitably going to get a cold. So they're part of the human condition. There's no product. This is for management. There's no product you can buy that's going to prevent your machine from getting sick. If a vendor says, I just invented the magic pill, they're lying. And then this one tends to get a good laugh, and I have to censor myself, but just because we invented antibiotics doesn't mean you go crazy. And you guys from the 70s know what I'm talking about. So, it should be some of you got it. Just because, and a lot of users do this, oh, I have Norton, so I should be protected. I can click on whatever I want. No. So we have to change that mindset, okay? That's like my 10-year-old pointed out that people who use helmets tend to take more risks because they feel that, well, I have the helmet on, so I'll be safer. No, it's supposed to be the last line of defense. Don't take more risks because you have the helmet. And then study. continually study. And I'm guilty of this, and I hope you agree with me. Our desk side manner has been terrible. All right? We tell our users behind their back they're stupid. Right? They don't understand anything. So why would they listen to our prescriptions to better themselves when we belittle them? All right? So our desk side manner needs to improve. And just, I'm sure you've experienced this with your doctor. When your doctor has good bedside manner, you tend to listen to them. When they don't, you ignore them. All right? So when you prescribe a certain action, if you do it nicely, they'll actually think about it when they get that email that asks them to click. Okay, so what to do when you get back to your offices? Get to know, maybe not you, but get somebody, whether intern or somebody from the help desk, or maybe you do it, but get to know your assets. You need to know your neighborhood. Who lives in your neighborhood? Where's the Exchange server, right? Where's the SharePoint server, and so on. Visualize your data. I mean, I was shocked to see the stuff that we saw. Totally unexpected results by just visualizing the data. You can use the tool that we provided, but there's plenty of other stuff out there like Elastic, Logstash, Kibana, Tableau. There's plenty of tools that you can start to visualize your data. And then use those visualizations to communicate to management. They love crayon pictures. Leverage your new insights to create new clinical trials, right? If you see certain things and you want to enrich that data, then create the trial and deploy it in log-only mode. And then a few weeks later, you can actually make an informed decision and then basically make it evidence-based. And I think I'm right on the money. Is there any questions?
Fantastic analysis. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. Did you find in any of your studies here that there's such a thing as herd immunity or equivalent?
Herd immunity?
Herd immunity is where you get a certain percentage of the herd immunity.
Mhm.
And it prevents the spread of disease.
So not immunity. So when you have a customer that has the firewall and the IPS on some of their machines, I wouldn't call it herd immunity, but I would call it like alerts. Like they become like the neighborhood gossip. So if you were watching, I have many customers who don't have the IPS or firewall turned on, unfortunately. So when we tell them, turn it on a random set of machines, they become the canary. Okay, so it's not herd immunity, but at least you get, as long as it's random, because if you just turn it on IS, then so you have the canary to alert you, but you have to be looking, and not looking in that one day console. You got to look at it over time. Question in the back.
So if you were to treat, like CDC does, any kind of dysfunction with the computer as if you look at the code 7 and 59, all like pieces that are not cohesive. So I think an appropriate example might be the person with all equivalent of creating applications, not malicious. Applications that don't work together, they don't realize that the computer failed. Most of us, I think, would be an IT problem. But what you're saying, that's a security problem. Security needs to get involved.
Yep.
We need to start treating what's bugging IT instead of security.
Yeah, so when you're right on, man. You're installing all these applications. What DLLs came with those applications, right, that introduce vulnerabilities? And if they installed it, you probably have no purview into them, so you're not going to patch it anymore. I'll use an example. Anaconda is holier than Swiss cheese, right? So somebody installs it because they need to write their little scripts, not knowing that they just opened up that machine to a ton of vulnerabilities, right? So yeah, when you install too many applications, it's somebody eating too many different things, or taking many different medicines. And you don't know what the interactions will be. Anybody else? All right, well, thank you for coming.